Stoic preconceptions of God's nature from the folk stories of Celts and Nordic names, i.e. Woden, the name of God for the Celts and Nordic people. Now this second frightening idea of God, setting man against man, threatens God's condition of Lord of Reason. This is why the Romans rejected Woden or the Jewish wrathful God as folk origin stories. But we as moderns do not feel so threatened. Woden set the nations against each other for the origin of a new synthesis, the greater good, so that although Woden, God, was a feudalist, new heroes would emerge both in his hall Valhalla and on earth to remove evil by strengthening the folk and the human species. The test of competition was thus constant: war, sex, birth, a vigorous but frightening world. The Nordics and Celts thus explained the first realism worldview amongst their cultures by projecting preconceptions of God's nature onto Woden. Yet this statement seems arrogantly Roman, because the Romans saw God as perfect, as did the ancient Stoics and later Christians, who had been injected with much Roman Stoic teaching and the metamorphosis of the Nordic border because of the Nordic invasions of Italy, the Nordic border God into the Jewish Christ. Because if you read the modern the Bible and see what the Christians, what Christ actually said, is quite different to the modern conception of Christ as the forgiving God. You know, Christ said he would bring war and famine and disaster to test humanity for their redemption, but the Nordic border God was another kind of saviour in terms of Nordic mythology. But we're just talking about these gods and things as conceptions. I don't believe in them. I'm just saying, using them as a method of reasoning. For Stoic and some rationalist schools of Christianity, God with an imperfect or disharmonious method, i.e. Woden, was too much, and so they attempted to modify God to their preconceptions, which could be right or wrong. However, the world is not perfect in absolute terms. This line of reason means that God is not perfect. For the Stoics, this is blasphemy. For Christians, this is blasphemy. If it is blasphemous to say, then we are stifling our own reason with tradition. That is not reason analysing reason. The Stoic modern approach to power analysis between good and evil, God versus evil. God is perfect, but the world is not, because A, God needs to sort out who are the villains and who are the heroes, and seeks to enlarge his army of heroes. That is the conception of Woden as a god. Is this not all power? But God is thus not all powerful, but is the father of mankind. God thus is partial to some nations and not to others, since evolution chooses what is apt to the conditions. Not all nations are rational or even good in this view, or worth saving in this view, more disturbingly. But since God is good, he cannot bring himself to kill even the enemy, even his enemies, the evil people. But relies on his powers of pressure, physical and reasoning and threat, and that he, God, uses our innate instincts as human beings to kill our enemies, who threatens our families or right to use reason for the benefit of liberty and equality, to harvest new heroes to protect the good from evil. In effect, He uses evil's strength against itself. Thus God makes every evil act have a reckoning, where he has the physical power to do so. In this conception of God, it is closer to the Woden than Zeus, but this may have chagrined the Romans due to their republican democracy and later empire, and Caesars, who considered their authority from God and reason. An imperfect God meant imperfect reason and imperfect authority, and thus imperfect piety. That God's power for good is finally balanced by the Logos, the pure synthesis of a matrix, or of synthesis, is with the numerical inferior power of evil. This preconception seems logical. Evil is held at bay by a natural law of the universe which God imposes on the evildoers. However, we must note that we are a melancholy race, Europeans, and we note evil so that we are able to seek it out, to root it out. We do not notice to the same extent the good and natural services and goods which are free in terms of a way an economist would say a free good. Rather we Stoics who see reason itself as a good service and also a positive good for society. God as a principal conception in law and philosophy for Stoics modern and ancient. If God and the world are imperfect in the absolute sense, would be as illogical as saying that they are absolutely perfect. This would make a Stoic go back to bed. All conditions are not known, least of all God. Even if God is a universal being who created mankind and the universe even exists, to say that they do means that an emotional attachment that falters reason through projections and preconceptions. Even Epictetus himself, who wrote the Discourses, was guilty of this through the phrase, God does exist and cares. This is the basis of atheists and those who cannot see that reason itself cannot see beyond the horizon set for us by human nature. Capital per worker, technology, in short the equilibrium of the Logos at any particular time. Do we have the technology to prove evolution and the Big Bang, or that man is sentient? For the first two, yes, but the last is debatable, because we do not know the true nature of the Logos itself entirely, or thus the reality of nature. If our God as a conception does know, he holds his cards close to his chest. In other words, power plus secret knowledge and technology and hierarchy are backwards developments, since they prevent the application of reason to the problems and advances that derive from truth. Thus, the people in charge are and have in history been like people in a burning house, telling everyone that everything is fine and normal. Well, because of this, we confuse ourselves that their chaos is normal and that God's laws or nature's laws are abnormal, that humans are capable of good reason and kindness is the word that modern Stoics seek to convince the world is true, but irrationality for its own sake and war are forces to be weeded out, and we gratefully accept the test.